He was my brother's best friend. And my secret lover. The first time I saw Ethan differently, I knew I was walking into danger. He wasn't just another man. He was my brother Jake's best friend, the boy who used to raid our fridge after football practice, the guy who had been around our house so often he practically felt like family. That should have made him off limits. But the summer he came to stay with us during college break, something changed. I was 21, back from university, restless in my own skin, caught between being a girl and becoming a woman. Ethan was 23, taller than I remembered, broader in the shoulders, his jaw sharper, his eyes deeper. He carried himself differently now, with confidence, like he knew women watched him when he walked by. And I hated myself for noticing. But I couldn't stop. At first, it was harmless. Dinner conversations, late-night laughter in the living room, casual teasing when we passed each other in the hall. But I found myself watching him when he didn't know. The way his shirt clung to his chest after a run. The way his voice dropped lower when he spoke seriously. The way his eyes sometimes lingered on me a second too long before he looked away. One night, we ended up outside on the porch after Jake had gone to bed. The summer air was warm, heavy with the scent of cut grass. Ethan leaned back against the railing, sipping a beer, while I sat cross-legged on the swing. We talked about music, about college life, about dreams we weren't brave enough to say out loud to anyone else. He listened to me in a way most men didn't, like every word mattered. When I laughed at one of his stupid jokes, he reached out without thinking and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered, and for one breathless second, the world stilled. He pulled back quickly, muttering, "Sorry. I shouldn't," but I caught his wrist before he could move away. My voice was barely a whisper. "Don't be sorry." That was the first spark. After that, everything became more dangerous. His hand brushing against mine in the kitchen when we both reached for a glass. His shoulder pressed against mine on the couch, too close for just friendship. His eyes holding mine across the dinner table, saying everything his lips didn't dare. Every touch, every glance was fire. It all came undone the first night we were truly alone. Jake had gone on a weekend trip with friends, leaving the house empty. Ethan tried to keep his distance, pacing the living room like a man at war with himself. "This is wrong," he said, his voice strained. "He's my best friend. You're his sister. If he ever finds out." I stepped closer, my heart pounding so hard I could barely breathe. "Do you really want me to stop?" His silence said everything. In the next heartbeat, his lips crashed against mine. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, like weeks of restraint had finally broken. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me flush against him, and I melted into his arms like I had always belonged there. We stumbled toward the couch, kissing as if we had been starving. His mouth traced down my neck, his breath hot against my skin, sending shivers racing down my spine. My fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, needing him in a way I couldn't deny. "Tell me to stop," he whispered against my throat, his voice rough. "I don't want you to stop," I breathed. And he didn't. That night, in the quiet of my brother's empty house, Ethan became mine. His hands mapped every inch of me, his body claiming me with a mix of passion and tenderness that made my heart ache. We crossed a line we could never uncross, and when it was over, lying tangled together in the dark, I knew there was no going back. From then on, we lived a double life. By day, Ethan was Jake's best friend, laughing, joking, pretending nothing had changed. By night, he was mine, stealing kisses in the shadows, sneaking into my room when the house was quiet, whispering promises against my skin that made me tremble. The secrecy made it addictive. Every touch was risky, every kiss dangerous. And maybe that was why it felt so intoxicating. But secrets leave traces. One evening, while we were in the garage, Ethan leaned close, his hand brushing my hip as he whispered something that made me blush. Just then, Jake walked in. Ethan jumped back, guilt flashing across his face. My brother narrowed his eyes, suspicious, but said nothing. My heart raced for hours afterward. Later that week, I overheard Jake's voice in the backyard. He was warning Ethan. Stay away from her. She's my sister, man. Don't even think about it. I should have listened. We should have ended it. But that night, Ethan came to me anyway, his eyes dark with conflict. I don't care what he says, he whispered. I can't let you go. And when he kissed me, I knew I couldn't let him go either. Months passed like that, the secret growing heavier every day. The more we loved, the more dangerous it became. Sometimes, when Ethan held me, I felt the weight of it all pressing down, the guilt, the lies, the fear of losing everything. But then he'd look at me with those eyes, full of devotion and hunger, and I knew I would risk it all just to stay in his arms. The breaking point came the night Jake found out. It was late. Ethan had come into my room after everyone was asleep. We were tangled in each other, kissing like the world outside didn't exist, when the door suddenly burst open. Jake stood there, his face a storm of betrayal and fury. His voice cracked as he shouted, "How could you? Both of you!" I scrambled up, tears burning my eyes. Ethan tried to speak, but Jake wouldn't listen. His hand shook as he pointed at us. "You were my best friend. And you," he turned to me, his voice breaking. "You're my sister. Do you even realize what you've done?" He stormed out, the slam of the door echoing like thunder. For days, he didn't speak to me. The house felt empty, cold. I cried myself to sleep, convinced I had lost my brother forever, and that Ethan would walk away too. But Ethan didn't leave. He refused to. He went to Jake, looked him in the eye, and confessed everything. He didn't make excuses. He didn't beg. He told him the truth, that he loved me. That this wasn't a mistake or a fling, but something real, something worth fighting for. It wasn't easy. Jake's anger didn't fade overnight. But time has a way of softening even the sharpest edges. Slowly, he began to see it, not just the passion, but the love. The way Ethan looked at me like I was his whole world. The way I lit up when Ethan walked into a room. Weeks later, Jake finally sat me down. His voice was tired, but softer. "You really love him, don't you?" Tears filled my eyes as I nodded. "More than anything." He sighed, shaking his head. "Then I guess I'll have to get used to it." Years later, Ethan and I stood at the altar, his hand steady in mine as we said our vows. My brother sat in the front row, still shaking his head sometimes, but smiling anyway because he knew what we had was real. Ethan was no longer just my brother's best friend. He was my husband. My partner. My forever. And as I looked into his eyes, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones you're not supposed to have, until fate decides otherwise. He had once been a forbidden secret. Now he was my everything.